Greetings, everyone. It's Trey Jadlow. I'm here on this first day of August 2020. A hot, sultry afternoon here in Kansas City, and I'm here with my new friend, Tony Reed, whom I met a few days ago on a creationism blog, and he is a fan of science, and we have different views on our cosmogony or our cosmological perspective. And I asked him, actually goaded him to have a conversation. He graciously agreed to come on and discuss his perspective. So thank you for coming, Tony. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so the topic of discussion tonight is going to be cosmology. And I think we may have a different perspective on what exactly that means. But before we begin, would it be possible to get a little bit of your background? I know you have a YouTube channel. I mean, any pertinent information about you. I'm not allowed to, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself, my life, what I do for a living, and where I'm at with my, my creations.
Sure. My name's Tony Reed. I am a former reverend. I am now, I would say, there's a depending on what your definition of atheist is, that's where I tend to circulate. I have a channel that is called Tony Reed, and it features a show called How Creationism Taught Me Real Science. The idea of that show is actually to present the actual scientific evidence, not just me saying it, but actually showing the original sources and even linking to those sources, which is, sort of, at the end, it's not what I'm saying, it's what the papers show. So that's it. I mean, as far as education, I mean, I technically have a doctorate, but it's a doctorate in divinity with I guess you could say with an emphasis in apologetics, but yeah, that's about all that's pertinent to me. And I don't even think most of it's relevant to this conversation.
Well, yeah, it is, because I need to know where you're coming from, and so I can, feel out what you're coming and what you're thinking and why you're thinking it. That's really important. Thanks for that. All right, so you have a demon. Did you say?
I'm sorry. What?
Do you have you said you had a doctorate of divinity?
Divinity.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, where did you get your degree?
Well, you know that the seminaries are always given names like Blood of Christ and stuff like that, but it's a division of the Universal Life Church.
Universal Life. I've not heard of that.
It's one of the many franchises out there. At any rate, I'm no longer. When you get your ministerial credentials, they're there for life. You can't lose them. But I mean, I don't preach anymore, and don't really have a desire to.
So did you have an accredited then doctorate, or is it just some kind of certificate they give?
It's not an accredited doctorate.
Oh, okay. And so would this be like a kind of a non-denominational type thing?
It's an attempt at a non-denominational sect, but I would say they're mostly based on Northern Baptist, perhaps Great Lakes region.
Okay, so did you say it was Universal Life? Universal
Life.
Okay, all right. I'll look that up later. That's interesting. All right, so you're probably charismatic then, huh?
I wouldn't say. There's two uses of the word charismatic that I'm aware of. I wouldn't call myself either one.
No, I mean when you were a Christian, you believed in speaking in tongues and healing and all that stuff.
No, I never did quite get into that.
But did your church teach that stuff?
Perhaps when I was growing up, but not by the time I was, reached adulthood.
Okay, so do you feel like you understand the Christian faith pretty well?
Yes.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad for that. That'll be helpful for us to know that. All right, so and tell you about myself. So I live in Kansas City metropolitan area. I'm on the Kansas side here. I've been a Christian 33 years. I'm a Reformed Baptist. I was actually saved in an organization called YWAM. Have you ever heard of that, or Youth with a Mission?
Say that one more time. You cut out for a second.
Have you heard of Youth with a Mission, or YWAM? It's a youth missions organization. It's
I've heard the
charismatic
term
organization.
YWAM. I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't. I mean, not. I haven't heard it.
Okay,
The
well, I became
entire.
a Christian when I
Yeah.
was 20 in this organization, and then anyway, I kind of migrated in my denominational affiliation, so now I'm a Reformed Baptist. But I'm a dental technician, so I make crown and bridge work for dentists, and I work alone. And I'm kind of an autodidact. I don't have a lot of education. I have very little bit of college, but not much. I wasn't really interested in education really until I became a Christian. Anyway, I'm kind of fascinated with things of ultimacy, origins, meaning, morality, destiny. And when I find something interesting, I tend to latch on. I'm kind of an odd learner. I'm kind of lopsided into things that I know. I know some weird things that most people don't know, and then I don't know some simple things that most people do know. So anyway, I enjoy having conversations of this caliber. And particularly like to argue over cosmogony, what we'll be talking about tonight. So I'm grateful for this opportunity. So why don't we go ahead and, and also I got 6 kids, sadly I'm divorced too. I've got 6 kids, ages 30 down to 16. All right, so the link that we were haggling over was on this creationism Facebook page. And it's linked in the description there, and it's a cosmological argument for God. And it talks about how why scientists almost unanimously now agree that the universe had a beginning. And you were characterizing it as a Kalam cosmological argument, which it kind of is, but cosmological argumentation is not, it's not necessarily just the Kalam argument. It's basically referring to Thomas Aquinas' 5 ways. Are you familiar with Thomas Aquinas?
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with Thomas Aquinas.
Okay, so basically he's got 5 ways that are they're called 5 proofs of God's existence. And what you're doing, what cosmological argumentation really means, you're basically just arguing from the cosmos deductively to a creator. And so it can come through through motion, through change, through contingency, through degree. That's his 4th way, and the 5th way is through purpose or teleology. And so it doesn't necessarily focus on the Kalam argument, but we can generally what the argument that Kalam is going to be focusing on, which is my favorite one, which is contingency. Contingent being cannot exist independently by definition. And would it be fair to say that you think that the universe is just a brute fact? Would that be your perspective? Or maybe you could give me a little background on what you believe regarding the origin of the universe.
Well, first, I think you misrepresented my argument. So can I take an attempt to clear that up?
Absolutely. Yes, please do.
Okay. On the actual exchange you're talking about, the overall OP was, one argument. I wasn't directly refuting the OP. There was actually 3 posts there. One was that the OP misrepresents, or something like that, misrepresents the cosmological argument. And it did. Second one was that it misrepresents what the Big Bang model is. And I had a video for that. And that video did in fact I guess it was a slideshow, did in fact misrepresent the Big Bang model. And then it also, the third one was about the second law of thermodynamics and how that slideshow did in fact misrepresent the second law of thermodynamics. Had nothing to do with the direct refutation of the entire argument altogether.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I think you read into the argument what you wanted to see, because those things were not addressed in there, except maybe the first one. What was the first problem you had with it? You said it misrepresented the Kalam cosmological argument or something?
Well, I mean, if we want, I can screen share video, or not video, but make a screenshot, and you can see where it actually does address not just the Kalam cosmological argument, although not by name, as well as the second law of thermodynamics, as well as what the Big Bang model.
Okay, tell you what, here, I can screen share it. I'm at that Facebook page here. Let's see. Hold on just a minute. I'm not sure how this works. There, I think that should work. Can you see it now?
Well, I can see your screen. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, all right. So it says a cosmological argument for God and why scientists almost unanimously agree that the universe had a beginning. Do you have a problem with that statement?
So, well, yeah, I would say that the scientists have not unanimously agreed that the universe had a beginning.
Okay, well, Stephen Hawking said in The Nature of Space and Time on page 20, he said, almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. That's Stephen Hawking.
That's great that Stephen Hawking said that or wrote that. And then if you go ahead, hold on, I'll let you finish your conversation, I promise. He did, in fact, make that statement, or at least he made some statement like that. And then in the next book, I mean, he goes over the very nature of how we can't really say time had a beginning or didn't have a beginning, especially when he goes into quantum mechanics.
Okay, so was he contradicting himself, or what was he doing there?
I can't speak for Stephen Hawking. I'm speaking for the scientific evidence. So, you can tell me what Stephen Hawking's public opinion was. I want to see what his published opinion was in peer review articles.
Okay, well, if this was his published work.
Was it peer reviewed?
Well, I'm sure it was. I mean,
no, it's not a journal. He did not present it in any scientific form. That was meant for public consumption. And by the way, I have to, with my show, I'm constantly trying to simplify science for the layperson, and you're just going to get things wrong. And you know what? People, when you really think about it, the same thing applies even to depictions of biblical events. To this day, we still don't know for sure whether Jesus was punctured right in the palm, right in the wrist. We don't really know for sure. But when a church decides to show a depiction of Jesus, they do have to make a choice. They may or may not be wrong or right, but there are going to be misrepresentations or oversimplifications that occur. And when Stephen Hawking is talking to the average person, there are some contexts that are going to be missing.
Okay, well, I just quoted Stephen Hawking, and he said there's a virtual unanimous consensus that the universe had a beginning at the Big Bang. What evidence would you show that would be incorrect?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you, I mean, I can show all the details of a singularity. I mean, if you want me to, I mean, I don't have the paperwork ready for you right now, but a singularity in and of itself, at that point, all laws of physics as we understand them break down. We cannot say whether there was a before, whether there was a next to. We can't really even describe the moment of the Big Bang. The best we can do with the understanding of physical laws as we know them is go back to about negative 44 seconds after the Big Bang.
Okay, well, I'm not talking about physics. I'm talking about metaphysics and logic.
Why would we be talking about metaphysics? Why would you be bringing up Stephen Hawking in a metaphysical conversation?
Well, Stephen, you were just saying that from a physics perspective that the universe, that the consensus is not that the universe had a beginning, and I was quoting Stephen Hawking, who said that yes, virtually everybody does that. That's because I was answering your particular question. But my point is that if you're going to say the universe you're not making any statements. You're just saying you don't know. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Whether there's a God or something or whatever happened?
No, whether the universe had a beginning, whether the universe is contingent or aseid. You know what aseid is?
Yeah, I get it. What I am actually saying is that, yeah, right. We don't know. We have no method of knowing at present.
Well, sure we do. We have laws of logic.
Okay.
If something changes, is it affected by itself or is it affected by something outside of itself?
It could be either. But this is, I mean, what you're doing is you're when it comes to the laws of logic, what we need to do is show how we can demonstrate it. What you're going to try to do is argue philosophically. The difference between philosophy and science is philosophers will sit around a fire all day discussing how many teeth should be in the mouth of a horse, and one will come up with 47, one will come up with 87. The scientist goes out and counts them. they don't rely on the philosophy except for to predict. Now we can go into that. If you want to talk about what your laws of logic will predict, we can go into that. But I mean, if you're just going to make a philosophical argument, I don't have any interest in that. I'm interested in science.
I don't think you understand it. Do you understand that science is predicated on philosophical presupposition?
It doesn't make a difference. We have one requirement for something to be scientific. If you want to say science is a type of philosophy, I'll grant you that all day. But what you're not doing, what you're doing is looping it or lumping it in with all other branches of philosophy. It isn't like the other branches of philosophy because it's predicated on being able to see what you predict.
Right. So nature is all there is. Matter is all there is. The only truth that we can know is that what we can experience with our senses. Would that be a fair thing to say?
No.
Oh, you don't believe that? You're not a physicalist?
I don't have a belief on this. What I can tell you is the physical is the only thing we can really depend on because we can make a test. We can predict something and see the result of it. The rest is nice furniture for the scene, but it isn't going to really go anywhere with it. You can't take your arguments for logic or your arguments for God and produce a product other than perhaps a product that advertises God. You can't take the assumption of, let's just say, a creation event and predict where a discovery will be made. But you can do that with science.
Okay. Do you? How important would you say the law of non-contradiction is to this scientific endeavor?
It isn't a law, so not very.
The law of non-contradiction is not a law?
It's certainly not a physical law, scientific law.
So it doesn't exist?
Didn't say that. I just said it's not applicable.
Okay. Do you know what the law of non-contradiction is?
Yeah, a logical argument must be internally consistent. It cannot contradict itself.
Okay. So how important is that when you're doing scientific inquiry?
Inquiry? It's extremely important.
Okay.
What do you consider?
Would you say that it's a foundation for the scientific method? Half the scientific method is it's induction and deduction. Would you agree with that?
The scientific method is essentially seeing something, observing it, and formulating a theory on what caused it, what made it to happen, formulating hypotheses on what would be predicted by assuming that theory to be correct, and then going out and testing reality to see if that prediction holds true. If it does hold true, you still don't know for sure that your theory is correct, but you do have more strength. If it doesn't hold true, then you either need to reject or revise your theory. Now, if you want to apply the law of non-contradiction to that process, I'll be happy to discuss it.
Well, that's what we're talking about right now. Do you believe that something can be and not be at the same time and in the same relationship?
I've had no experience with it. I don't care what my belief is.
I don't know what that means. Do you believe something?
I'm not talking about belief. I'm talking about with my show and everything I discuss on this subject. I'm only discussing what can be scientifically acquired, what you can test and predict.
Okay. Can you test and predict the law of non-contradiction?
I don't know. You tell me. I mean,
you have to rely on it to make a statement about it. Tony, you really don't know what you're talking about, do you?
We aren't talking about the same subject. That's exactly what you had intended to do. And this is exactly why I didn't want to go forward.
We're talking about the scientific method, my friend.
We are talking about using the scientific method, but the subject is the Kalam cosmological argument. We haven't even discussed it.
Which is predicated upon the law of non-contradiction.
Fair enough. Okay, so it's the law of non-contradiction. Go ahead now.
Okay, so
where is the contradiction?
Okay, so now the two things that we've got to have in our inquiry, we've got to have a law of non-contradiction, and then we've got to have basic reliability of sense perception. Otherwise, we can't have any inquiry. Would you agree with that? Our only connection to this world that we have basic reliability of sense perception. We don't have to have exact. Of course, our senses fool us, but generally speaking, we've got to have some correspondence to our sense perception to reality. Otherwise, we have no connection to the world. Would you agree with that?
For the sake of this discussion, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I haven't had anybody not grant me both of those presuppositions. All right, so are you familiar with Descartes' cogito ergo sum?
Yeah, I think therefore I am, or I doubt therefore I am, really.
Yeah, if there's a doubter, there's got to be somebody making a question. So I can know by way of Descartes' deduction that at least I exist. I can even be a solipsist, and I know that I, the inquirer, exist. Otherwise, there'd be no one asking the question. Okay, and that's why I've got to have enough sense perception to know that I exist. I don't even have to grant that you exist. It doesn't really matter. All I've got to know is that I exist, and then when I do that, and I have the law of non-contradiction, I know that I could not have created myself. Would you agree with that?
I don't know. I don't remember when I was born. Do you?
Yeah, but and then this is where law of non-contradiction comes in. In order for me to create myself, I would need to be and not be at the same time in the same relationship. In other words, if I moved from potentially being to actually being, I would need to, when I was potential, I didn't actually exist, okay? And so I would have had to exist when I didn't exist in order to make myself if I made myself. You know what I mean? You cannot have something changing and acting to change itself, because it would need to be that potential, the actual, before it actually was. It doesn't make any sense. You violate the law of non-contradiction. So if you have something that's changing, you have something that is dependent or contingent by definition. Now, you cannot have an entire set of pure contingency, because it would need to be and not be at the same time in the same relationship. You understand that?
I do. And now we have to go back, because now, I mean, the way you've just applied the law of non-contradiction, I mean, in that sense, we do have something where science contradicts it, and regardless of whether you believe it, you benefit from it every day. And that is that quantum mechanics does actually actually imply and predicts that at a certain level below what's called the Planck length, all matter, energy, and universe, it's in a state of what we call quantum foam, and time makes no sense there. It has before can happen before, the before can happen after the effect. We see this in quantum mechanics, and we use this to predict. This is exactly, in fact, the fact we're having this conversation is because satellites are using the basics of quantum mechanics, the assumptions of the Planck length, to make this broadcast possible. Not only that, but the computers or devices that we're using to see this or interact in this are also the result of that. So is that where you want to go on that? Or, I mean,
yeah, it is indeed where I want to go, because we don't understand quantum mechanics, but that doesn't mean that the law of non-contradiction does not hold. Are you familiar with the principle of explosion?
Yes.
What is it?
You said explosion?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you mean, I thought you meant the concept of like an explosion. I'm sorry. No, I'm not familiar with the principle of explosion.
Principle of explosion is something Aristotle came up and he said, once you deny the law of non-contradiction, the exact opposite of whatever you're asserting also becomes true, and all inquiry becomes nonsense. If you're going to deny the law of non-contradiction, then it's also true that the law of non-contradiction holds. Nothing makes sense. You cannot have any inquiry once you deny the law of non-contradiction. Now, it is true that at a quantum level, we don't understand how things work, and it's very mysterious to us. But it doesn't mean the law of non-contradiction breaks down, because if it does, then science is dead. We're done. We can't do it anymore. That's not the way to go. We need to say that we need to keep studying and observing and doing science and try to figure it out. But it doesn't mean that it becomes irrational, because once it becomes irrational, you're dead. You throw out your science altogether, because you're also asserting that it's a lie. Nothing makes sense.
Well, first of all,
you can say I don't know. That's fine.
What's that?
Saying I don't know is fine, but don't say the law of non-contradiction doesn't hold, because you just committed the principle of explosion, and you just also asserted that it does hold. You have to rely on it in order to say that it doesn't work.
It doesn't hold. What I said is we do see something that refutes the law of non-contradiction. It is mysterious, but what you just said is that doesn't mean it doesn't always hold, and I'll grant you that. But that also doesn't mean it always does hold. So we do have room for doubt there. But
Okay,
again,
if it doesn't hold,
I'll go ahead
then
and
it's gonna-
accept. I'll go ahead and accept that concept for this, because we're probably talking about things at the Newtonian level, correct?
No, we're talking about even at the quantum level. It doesn't. It's a different world in which we live. But you cannot deny the law of non-contradiction, because it also means that the law of non-contradiction holds. Nothing makes sense once you do that.
No,
You
then
cannot
we're going to
deny
have
it.
to
Science
resolve
is
that.
dead. You just threw
We're gonna
science
have-
out the window. You're
I
going to
didn't.
destroy society when you do that.
I didn't throw science out the window.
Well, once you say the law of non-contradiction doesn't hold, there's no way that you can know anything.
I didn't say
that's
that,
science,
did
my
I?
friend.
Let me repeat myself one more time. I didn't say that the law of contradiction doesn't hold. I said there is
At the quantum level.
At the quantum level, there are things that contradict each other.
That
Do
is
they
a violation
violate
of
the law of
non-contradiction.
non-contradiction? Do they violate the law of contradiction? We don't know. But we do know that they do seem to contradict each other. And
Okay, they seem
that's
to,
okay.
but we know that it doesn't. I'm sorry.
We can leave a question mark there. And like I said,
Okay.
we can continue the conversation under the assumption that it will always hold true. But based on what you said with the, cogito ergo sum, I mean, even that holds true, even with the law of non-contradiction.
Yes, because you can't deny the law of non-contradiction. Once you do,
that wasn't what I said, but let's move on.
Well,
because
okay,
we are going to eventually discuss the cosmological argument, right?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's cosmological argument is a general sense, which again, as I said, is a version of the argument from contingency. You cannot have dependent existence existing independently. Would you agree with that?
Say that one more time.
You cannot have dependent existence existing independently. It's a violation of law of identity.
Well, you might also say it's a violation of the law of non-contradiction, because if you are dependent, you are not independent. If you're independent, you are not dependent.
That's right.
So
like the universe cannot be.
I'll go ahead and accept that law for this conversation. So yeah, I've already accepted that.
Okay, so would you believe that the entire universe is changing?
I can see it change from day to day.
Okay. If it doesn't change, then it cannot be acted upon. Because once something is acted upon, it's dependent upon that which acts upon it that enacts the change. So change necessarily entails dependent existence.
Let me just go ahead and say yes to your premises, and let's get to the Kalam cosmological argument. Go ahead. Give me all the premises. Let's go to the cosmological argument.
Okay. If the universe is changing, it cannot exist independently. There must be two ontologies within the universe. There must be self-existent being. If there is contingent being, it's a modus ponens argument. If you grant dependent existence, you cannot deny independent existence, because dependent existence cannot exist independently.
Okay, wait a minute. Dependent existence. What are we arguing is dependent?
Anything. You the inquirer. Are you dependent?
It's not exactly the same question. I mean,
No,
you're saying that
the
universe is dependent, therefore it can't be independent?
Well, for the sake of this argument, all we're saying is I, the inquirer, exists. Nothing else exists. We don't need to mess with anything else. If dependent existence is, then independent existence must exist by definition, because you cannot be dependent independently.
Yeah, but you can be mutually dependent, can't you?
What's that mean? There's only one thing. All we're talking about is the inquirer right now.
You just said a dependent entity can't exist independently.
Right.
So it can depend on something else that is dependent on it, correct?
It can depend on what?
It can depend on something else that is also dependent on it, correct?
If you want to add something to, you can, but you cannot have an infinite regress of dependent beings existing independently. I'm sorry.
Why?
Because you've already granted this. I believe that dependent existence cannot exist independently.
That wasn't what I asked why for. I asked why can there be no infinite regresses?
Infinite regress of dependent being?
Yeah. Why can there not be one? I mean, if you're dependent on me, I'm dependent on you.
Okay,
You're dependent on me. I'm dependent on
let me
you.
say it again.
It is an infinite regress in and of itself.
An infinite regress of dependent existence existing independently. Think about it.
So you're saying that something that must exist because of something else.
Right. It's modus ponens arguments.
So you're saying my doubt is dependent upon something else.
Well, I'm saying your certainty of your own existence gives you the idea that and when you know that you exist, you observe yourself and you say, well, I am dependent in my existence. You're not self-existent. You got to eat food. You got to have sunlight. You got to have water. And if you don't,
but we're doubting that though. We're just at the point of where you're just doubting. You're not even talking about dinner. You're just talking about, I know I'm doubting, and therefore I know I am dependent because.
And is the doubter changing?
Probably.
Okay. Well, I don't know. That probably demonstrate that you're self-existent. I mean, were you born?
I'm told I was. I don't remember it, but yeah, I have a paper that says.
Were you ever 10 years old?
I believe. Yeah, I remember that.
So you moved from states of existence. You changed from potentially being something to actually being something. You moved from being potentially, like for me, I was potentially bald, and now I'm pretty actually bald right now. I know that I am not self-existent.
Right. We're still not getting to the point to why am I dependent instead of just independent? Why must I be dependent?
Dependent existence cannot be acted upon. I'm sorry, independent existence. It's independent. It cannot be acted upon. Okay?
So who says anybody's acting upon the universe?
Well, for our inquiry right now, would you grant that there's such a thing as dependent existence?
There is such a thing as dependent existence, or at least there is such a concept of dependent existence.
Instantiating in you, the inquirer.
Sure.
Okay. Can dependent existence exist independently?
Dependent existence. Me as myself, no, I can't, because but dependent existence, can it exist independently?
All we're talking about is you anyway, right now.
Okay.
So you
dependent existence cannot exist independently, or at least cannot. In this case, will not be entertaining any. We're not going to be entertaining any contradictions with the law of non-contradiction. So, dependent.
You didn't make yourself before you existed.
We still haven't determined that I'm dependent.
Oh, now you're saying you might be. Oh, so now you're saying you're independent?
No, just because I'm doubting. No, that's not what I said. I said just because I'm doubting. Why have we concluded that I'm dependent?
No, the doubting gives you your ontological status. You know that you exist through doubting. You know that and not because you doubt it. It's because you can't doubt it. You know that you exist.
I'm sure people doubt that they exist. In fact, there's plenty of people who doubt that they exist.
Okay, if there's no doubter, Tony, listen. If you're doubting that you exist, then there's no inquiry, right?
If I'm doubting that I exist, there's no inquiry.
If you're saying that if people will not grant that they themselves exist, then there's nobody to ask a question, right?
I get what you're trying to get at. And again, I'm still wondering where I become independent. If you're wondering,
you can't.
If I am doubting, what makes me dependent?
If you're doubting, you know that you are asking a question about existence, right?
Sure.
Okay, so you know that you, the inquirer, exists so that you can ask the question about existence, and you realize that you yourself are a dependent being.
Why do I realize that?
Because you had to eat food.
No, we're just knowing that I'm doubting. We still haven't gotten to that point. Even Descartes didn't get to that point. He didn't go directly from I know I'm doubting, therefore I know my food. He had to go ahead and establish a whole line of questioning, and we can go through
Descartes
that.
was a theist,
we'll
my man.
never.
Descartes
It
was a
doesn't make a
theist,
difference. Great. It doesn't
and
really.
he
I
did
don't
that
care.
through rational inquiry.
I get this, but you are the one presenting the argument here, not Descartes.
That's exactly right.
So present the argument. Why must I be dependent? Why can I not be independent?
Okay, can you hold just a second, Tony? I got a phone call.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I may have to pick up my son here. His phone didn't work or something. He called and I didn't answer. But anyway, all right. So
let's
you're
get
saying
to the
how?
cosmological argument then. Let's go ahead and get to what we were supposed to talk about.
Well, the whole thing is about that which began to exist must have a cause. The universe had a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause. That's exactly what I'm arguing right now.
Okay.
You are the universe for this argument.
Whether or not there is a God, we do not know that the universe began. That's even if there is a God.
Is the universe
we still
changing?
Can't make that. The universe is changing.
Okay, then it had a beginning. Change necessitates dependent existence. Dependent existence is not eternal by definition.
Okay, we're talking about time, a spatial dimension. Dimensions certainly can go on forever.
What is time?
Time is another dimension that we experience as a flow.
How do you know it?
A procession
How do you know what
of
time
matter.
is?
Okay, well, you're using the argument. This is your argument. You're the one presenting it. So let's go ahead and go with your definition of time. What's your definition of time? How do you know what time is?
Time is just a measurement of contingent being or contingent matter moving in relation to each other. We can go through planetary clocks or we can go through atomic clocks. We're looking at matter in motion and we're measuring it, and that gives us what we call time. That's how we experience it. I'm not making an absolute statement of everything that time is.
How do we know? But you said, how do you know there's time? And I know that was supposed to be a gotcha question for me. So I don't know. You tell me, how do I know what time is?
No, I just told you what time is. It's matter moving.
I didn't say what is time. I asked, how do I know what time is? There's a big difference between those two. What you did, the reason you know what time is because you read that definition. But
no, through your sensory experience.
Okay, so through my sensory experience.
Yeah, you measure the
as we're flowing through dimension, as we're flowing through the dimension of time. Now, if you want to argue that time is not a dimension, I'll go right back to the quantum mechanics that is making it possible for us to have this conversation right now. The quantum mechanics that literally considers time a dimension, works with it as a spatial dimension, is literally it's a dimension, and that's if a dimension can certainly be infinite. The universe can be infinite. I don't know if it is. I don't know if it isn't, but it certainly can be. You don't say that I can't. Hold on, let me finish. I will let you talk because it is your channel after all.
Sure.
But if you're going to make the argument that we can't be here because you can't have infinity or some kind of infinity, you're acting like there isn't an infinite amount of time before the Big Bang. We don't know if there is, but the fact of the matter is that we don't know it is. We're thinking of this as a dimension. So you would not argue that I could not be in this physical location because I didn't go through all of that infinity out there in space. You would agree that I could have started right here physically.
Okay. Well, I'm not necessarily, again, I'm not making a definitive statement about time, but I'm saying the only way that we can experience it is by contingent matter moving or having motion. Okay. And I don't really even
you were saying that time had a beginning. The universe had a beginning.
Well, time is just matter moving. Do you believe that there was a time when motion began?
I don't know if there was a time when motion began, and neither do you.
Well, yes, I do, because again, you can't have, because time is just a measurement of contingent being. Contingent being can't be all there is, because it's dependent. Dependent existence is not independent.
Our measurement of time is definitely dependent on it,
Okay.
but it is still there even when you die. I promise you. And so once again, we're coming back to, because you did say how you said you do know for sure that there was a time when something first moved, and you know that how?
Because contingent being cannot be eternal. It's not independent by definition. You've already granted that.
What does that have to do with it? Wait a minute. Okay, you're saying a contingent being. We did not say the universe was a contingent being. What we did is agree that I am a contingent being. The universe, you haven't even established that it's contingent yet.
Okay, so the universe that you're talking about then is different in ontology than you. In other words, it's possible that the universe could be self-existent and it gives you your dependent existence. Would that be a fair statement?
It could in both parts of your statement.
Okay, then you conceded my argument.
Which one?
That independent existence cannot exist. A dependent existence cannot exist independently. There must be a God that gives you a self-existent God that gives you your dependent existence.
What? Where you've already jumped to God from there? Where did that come in?
That would be self-existent. That's all I'm arguing for right now. I'm not talking about Yahweh right now.
Self-existent. What are you talking? Who said anything about self-existent?
Dependent existence cannot exist independently. There must be some ontology that has self-existence in order for dependent existence to be. Otherwise, it wouldn't be.
Great. Now, how did you establish that the universe is dependent?
By your eating breakfast this morning.
Now, are you kidding me?
If you want to say the universe, because if you want to define the universe as all that there is, well, then we're in agreement. I believe that the universe is all there is. But if you want to define the universe as, I'm sorry?
Number one, I didn't say that either. And number two, neither are you. You're arguing for something outside of the universe. Yes?
No, not necessarily. Depends on what you mean by outside.
Okay. You're right. You could be taking a pantheist view. I could see that.
No, pantheism is not making an ontological distinction. Hold on a minute. I'm texting my son here. I may have to go here in a minute. Pantheism doesn't make an ontological distinction between us being and contingent being.
I strike that. I strike that whole thing. Let's go ahead and move on to the cosmological argument. You were telling me that we know that the universe is dependent because
you ate breakfast.
Okay, explain how you took that and decided that the universe is dependent.
I'm sorry. Can you hold on just a minute? I apologize, Tony. Sorry about that. Yeah, I don't have to go pick them up, so we can talk.
Okay. I only have about 20 more minutes. I got to get out of here. So let's go ahead and handle this, man. How did you determine from me eating breakfast this morning, which actually I didn't eat, by the way, but that's okay. I did eat lunch. Oh, you know what? Never mind. I had pizza for breakfast like a normal bachelor. Anyway, okay. So I ate pizza this morning. You made a prediction. Therefore, congratulations there.
Yeah, but you conceded it.
Yeah, that's true. So I conceded that I ate breakfast this morning, and therefore
you conceded that you're dependent in your nature.
I'm dependent,
mm-hmm.
But we're talking about the universe.
Okay, is there some kind of being outside of you that you are conceding? Because I said we could be solipsist or something, but if you want to grant the entire universe as we experience it as actually existing, is there some kind of ontological distinction between your being and the being that you say that gives you your being?
I don't know if anything gives me my being. I mean,
well, you had
do
to
I
come into
exist?
existence.
Am I living? Are there? I mean, if you want to say that the summary parts of me are required for me to live, yeah, I would say that I have the very same type of existence as the parts around me.
Okay, and so
Now, if you're about to make a division fallacy by saying that because one part of a group has one particular characteristic, that characteristic applies to the entire set,
no.
or you're going to chastise me for not accepting that or saying the opposite of that, I'd like to hear this. This would be fun.
Well, I'm not saying you cannot say that an entire group of dependent existence can become independent simply by sheer number. Would you agree with that?
I don't know what that has to do with this. We're talking about the universe.
Well, you're accusing me of a composition fallacy.
Well, no, I'm asking you if that's what you're going to make. If you're not going to make that, that's fine.
Well, this is.
Are you lost too? Because I'm lost. Hello? Hello?
Are you there? I'm sorry. It's probably me. My internet drops out sometimes, especially with all the COVID use, I think.
That could easily be me. Only the audience knows.
Okay, so you can't say that simply because that I'm making the composition fallacy, because the logical corollary to what you're saying is if we have enough dependent being in this universe, that somehow the sheer number of them will make it independent. I'm not making an argument of composing anything together. It has nothing to do with that. It's just there's got to be two different types of being. You can't have dependent being existing independently. There's got to be something upon which the dependent being exists. And the thing that depends on cannot be dependent itself, because you can't have dependent being independent. It's a violation of the law of identity and of non-contradiction.
Okay, so now how do we do it? How do we establish that the universe is dependent?
By most manifestly by observance of change. But even if you say, oh, there's something out there that doesn't change, well, then you've conceded the argument. Those are two different ontologies, two different beings.
So you're saying that an independent entity can't have change within itself?
Yeah, it has changed.
Okay.
Composed
now, why does it need the outside for that?
I'm sorry?
Now, why does it need the outside of it? Why does it need to be dependent for an independent thing to have change within inside it? You just said
it can't be both independent and
changes.
dependent. I'm sorry?
You said because it changes, it has to be dependent. I asked you if something independent can contain things within it that are dependent, and you said yes.
Okay, so it's no. I'm saying it can have change within itself. In other words, yes, you're changing in yourself, but you also have continuity of being at the same time. But
I'm still inside the universe, dude. I'm changing within the universe. Yes.
Right. Yes.
Isn't everything else changing within the universe? I'd hate to think of what's changing outside of the universe.
Well, I'm not. I have no problem. God is not outside the universe. I think God is part of the universe. The universe is all that there is.
I was actually kind of making a dry joke, but that's okay. Okay, so I still haven't got the case. I still don't think you've made the case that the universe is dependent, and I don't see how it having dependent entities within it makes it have to be dependent. Okay. So moving on to that, the first part of that argument was everything that exists or everything that begins to exist has a cause. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the thing. Go ahead.
Well, that's another way of saying it. Every thing that changes is an effect, and every effect must have a cause. It cannot cause itself. It must be something outside of itself that brought it to that actual being where it's at.
Okay, so we're not using the Kalam cosmological argument then?
Yeah, I'm just restating it in a different way.
Can we restate it in the way it's supposed to be stated? Because otherwise we're using a different argument. You just redefined it.
Are you familiar with Averroes and Avicenna?
No, I'm not.
They're the
But
guys that
let's
came
go
up
ahead
with
and
it.
let's get the definition that Kalam gave it.
Mhm.
Go ahead. How's it stated by Kalam? It's actually different.
That which everything that begins to exist has a cause.
Actually, he originally, you're correct. That's how we use it, and that's how I use it. He actually didn't bother to say begins to. That was added later, but you're right. That is the argument I'm here to
Tell me the original version of it. Go ahead.
What's that?
Tell me the original version.
I'll go ahead and link you to it.
Well,
I don't have it with me right now. What's that?
You don't know it?
What do you mean? The original version of it? Oh,
Yeah.
The original version was just that which exists had a cause.
No, that's not what it was. It was that's what Bertrand Russell says.
Okay, fair enough. Anyway, the point is, the argument we're discussing, though, is that which begins to exist has a cause.
Right.
I have never seen matter or energy begin to exist, so I cannot say whether it ever had a cause.
Well, now matter and energy changes, right?
Change is not the same as beginning to exist.
Well, if it changes, then it has to be dependent in its existence, and it cannot be eternal.
Right. It's within the universe, so we're still no closer to showing the universe is dependent. But the fact is,
all I need is one thing, Tony. All I need is one thing to be dependent. That's all I need for the argument. You. That's all I need, and you. Therefore, there must be something somewhere, somehow that exists independently. Otherwise, you wouldn't be.
That's kind of irrelevant. We already discussed on that thing that could potentially be that thing that exists independently. We have not established one way or another whether the universe is dependent nor independent. Now, you argue that it's independent because you think, or you argue that it's dependent because you think it can't change. Now, but you do admit that an independent agency can, in fact, internally change.
No.
Well, why can't you're telling?
Because if it would change within itself, then it is a composite. That which is composed must have moved from potentiality to actuality to be what it was. The parts had to be put together. If you have parts in something, it had to be composed by something outside of itself, and therefore is contingent by definition as well. You can't have a complex, self-existent being. It doesn't work.
We're not talking about
composed.
Why can't we have a complex self-existent being? Why is that?
Because it wasn't what it was until it was composed of the parts, right?
The universe is the universe no matter how many parts are in it. Even if it has 0 parts, it's still a universe.
Okay, so you're saying that there is a being within the universe that is self-existent?
No, I'm not saying that at all. Anybody in the comments want to kind of clear that up? Did I say that?
Okay. Anyway, you know what, Tony? We can probably just. You need to get going, and I need to get going here in a few minutes as well. We can probably just go ahead and close it off.
All right.
So, all right. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, Tony. You've been a great interlocutor, and I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate the stimulating discussion. And maybe we can do it again sometime.
Perhaps, man. Have a good one.
All right. Okay. See you later. Take it easy.